Hello, guys, and welcome to a very special episode of the Stardom Cast. I'm your host, Rob Gooden. I'm joined, as ever, by Matt Turner. And I feel like it's appropriate that, with Ring of Honor making its triumphant return to television this week, that we have a Ring of Honor alumni in Allison Danger. Allison, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. Hey, somebody booked me for an ROH show. So pretty cool. Thanks for
Absolutely.
my gosh. Don't be y'all ready for
it. So obviously, Allison, you and Matt have known each other for a long time. How did you come to know each other? What's the story behind that?
Do you know the origin story, or do you want me to tell it?
Correct. Because I'm going to be general, because I do have that quantum leap Swiss cheese brain. We met through Ring of Honor when Punk was the coach, correct?
Correct.
And I was Coach Danger. And that was foreshadowing for the future. So,
I like it.
Picks of the day. I kind of just remember the group.
Yeah, I remember what would happen was a lot of times, and Punk would kayfabe us a lot on this, which was the genius of him. Is there are times we would get to the dojo and we'd be stretching or whatever, and Punk would either be at TNA, he would be in Japan, or I remember the one time he had a flight delay when he was working for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and he never told us he wasn't going to come to train. Or maybe every now and again he would tell Hagedorn, because Hagedorn was working in the office. But we would be stretching, and there were times that John Walters would walk in or Stevie Richards would walk in. But most of the time our, quote, I'm Rob, you're a teacher. Well, I guess a former teacher now. Our substitute teacher would walk in, be Allison Danger. And a lot of us would be, don't get me wrong, we loved training with Punk. We really didn't. I put him over all the time on the show. But when Allison walked in, we're like, yes, because this is good. Number one with Punk is you would stretch. You would run this was in the old RF warehouse. We would run the 5 or 6 miles around the whole warehouse. And we would do, nowhere to lie, 1,000 squats. At least. It was brutal. Me and Hagedorn tried to figure out how many squats we would do in a session, but it was brutal. It'd be 200 or 300 at a clip. And so Allison would come in. She's like, okay, what do you guys normally do? So we usually run, about 5-6 miles. She's like, okay, so we would run. We get to 2 miles. All right, guys, stop. So that's enough. Then we'd be like, what do you guys do? So about 1,000 squats, 250 a clip, take a break, and then do 4. I said, okay. We get to 200, and she'd be like, well, okay, that's enough. Take a break. Do your push-ups, sit-ups, and then she would sit in the ring. Now, we weren't allowed to touch the ring. We were not allowed to touch the ring until we were 4 or 5 months in. But she would sit in the ring, and she would go over flexibility. We would do yoga, and then we would be able to kind of pick her brain on anything that we would. And then she would just go into stories, certain things, this or that. And it was just awesome. And she always treated every one of the Ring of Honor students, as the majority of a lot of people in the Ring of Honor locker room did, with just so much respect. And, we always had such a ball when Coach Danger was coming to teach the class. we earned an awful lot. And what's nice about the wrestling business, and those, Allison, way better than me, is you may not see somebody 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and all of a sudden you bump into them, and then you start remembering these stories. And I probably haven't seen you in God be 12, 13, 14 years, and we saw each other at that seminar back in the summer, and it was just remember that one time this happened, remember the one time that happened, all these stories started clicking. So that's just the beauty about pro wrestling.
And it's so nice to hear it from someone else's perspective. And I don't know why I can't center myself on the damn camera. God, you youngins in your technical. It's so neat to hear it from someone else's perspective, because I've thought about my life, and sometimes I get it in my head where I'm like, yeah, nobody knows who I am, nobody cares, nobody remembers, blah blah blah. And then I'll meet someone, they'll be like, oh my gosh, we did this, and I was like, oh my God, we did. Well, this meant this to me, and I'm like, my gosh, it's kind of nice, and to be able to do that. And I'm like, Punk used to pull out the deck of cards. I remember that.
Gotch Bible. I'd still do it every week.
Yep. He would definitely do that. And I'm like, that's his thing. I'm a totally different coach, and people, and you've done my seminar. My seminars are completely different. I don't think anyone does seminars the way I do. And, they're goofy and they're fun, but you learn a lot. And I did a 4-hour one for Athena in Texas, Dallas, I believe. for Metroplex Wrestling, and we went 4 hours. And I just looked at everybody. I go, I'm gonna be honest, y'all. I got nothing else to do, and like this is fun. Y'all just want to keep going. Like you don't have to pay extra. Like let's keep going. We ended up going 6 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's overrun, and then there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm a big stick to your times kind of person, except when it's me. You know, your times doesn't go in the ring. I'm a stick to my times kind of gal for the most part. You know.
Yeah, you have to be.
When I only go 10.
I suppose that's what makes, you know, a dojo like a really interesting place. If every teacher is exactly the same, if you trained in exactly the same way as Punk did, then, you know, it would get very monotonous, I imagine, very, very quickly. But to have two very contrasting styles, and you mentioned the deck of cards. When I used to go to the gym, obviously, look at the state of me, I don't anymore. But I do remember the deck of cards. I don't know if it's a similar thing where obviously each card means something different, and then whenever someone draws the Joker, you will cry a little bit because you know it's going to be absolutely brutal. Is this the same sort of training regime?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
If anybody's wondering what we're talking about, it's called the Gotch Bible. You know, you can look it up. You can do it again. I do it once a week. I mix it in with my yoga. I go to the gym 5 or 6 days a week, and then I do that once a week, and I mix it with my yoga just to, because I'm 40, just to keep up with my flexibility and whatnot. But how Punk would do it is you would have your two colors. You would have black and red, and the black would be squats, and the red would be push-ups. So whenever you draw that card, like you get the 6 spades, whatever, you did 6 squats. And then if you got a face card, it counted as 20. The aces were 25. And the Joker card was you double whatever you just did before. So if you get a 6, you do 12. If the card before was an ace, then you do 50. So yeah, I tell everybody that give it a try, but just maybe try it with like 20, 22 cards to start, because you will burn your ass out, and make the workout your own. You know, you don't have to do squats or sit-ups or push-ups. You know, you make it, if you want to do it like I do 4 different exercises, because you have the 4 different suits. You have the clubs, the spades, the diamonds, and the hearts. So that's what I do, because I don't think I could be doing those 1,000 squats anymore. Maybe one day I'll try.
And then next few days you're at bathrooming.
Yeah. My leg days is 2 days to recover now.
I feel like this is something a lot of young wrestlers who weren't around in the early mid 2000s or even before then should be doing. Like, always travel with that deck of cards in your bag. You're at the hotel, you got nothing to do, and if it's like, you know, a cheaper hotel that doesn't have a gym, or you don't have the ability to get to a gym, you can still get a workout in. You can get that conditioning and do what you need to do to keep going and pass the time. And, you know, wrestling, there's been a lot of times you're sitting around at shows, or you're sitting around in a hotel room and you got nothing to do, and, you know, pull out the Gotch Bible.
I think that's a great idea. Obviously, I think I've still got a bit of PTSD from that blinking deck of cards from when I was doing it. But I'm obviously,
we'll send Coach Danger after you.
Sorry, it'll shaking. Now, just before I've got quite a few questions I want to ask Allison. I know that Matt, you wanted to ask a question first, to the point where you were super excited and text me to make sure that you got the first question in. Just a little peek behind the curtain.
So am I going? You tagging me in, brother?
Yeah,
okay.
man, you go for it.
So anybody that's listened to this podcast before know that we're massive fans of one Miss Io Shirai. I've been quoted on this podcast several times by saying that I think she's the greatest women's wrestler of all time. And I also think that she should be the one to defeat Roman Reigns for the double titles at WrestleMania, but that's just me. Allison, I know that you spent some time down at NXT with Miss Io Shirai. You have any questions, or any questions, any stories, or any fun facts or anything on Io?
So I know she loves cats. I will say she is as nice as she is amazing in the ring. And you would think, you know, somebody with that level of talent and that level of like notoriety doesn't have to be kind, doesn't have to be humble, absolute down to earth, sweet, sweet human being. I got to work with her just a few times, more shadowing Fit Finley being the actual producer, because he has such a great rapport with the women down there. And especially for like, what was the one we did? Was it War Games that I got to shadow him on, and Io was in there, and just like, and they're like, yeah, and then Io's going to do this. And I'm sitting there going, I couldn't do that on the best of days. And she's been in the business how long, and she's still getting it done. I'm like, good God. But absolute delight to work with, very easy to work with, very talented. I remember specifically on an NXT show where it was JC Jane, Persia Parado, who's now Steph DeLander again, and Io, and there was an injury, and all of a sudden it's just Steph and Io. And with the help of their producer, they killed it. And just everything live on TV was just called on the fly. And it's like, you know, you have two talented people, but then you have that language barrier, and they still felt their way through it. So I have nothing but respect for her.
How about were you there when Kyrie was there, or was she when you got down there? Was she called up? Kyrie Hoser.
So I never ran into Kyrie. I ran into Saray a bit. She was so sweet. I don't know if she's still there or not. I don't always keep up, but yeah, I thought Saray was super sweet. I loved the Chinese wrestlers like Erica Yan and I called him Roger. What was it? Ru Feng. I don't know. Like Don. I love them. They're all like so sweet, and I know Dante's still there and he's doing well. So like he's a good dude.
Yeah, he's been on Level Up this week. I mean, my big question, obviously, about your time in NXT was sort of piggybacking off what Matt said, and I was intrigued to know how. So, obviously, the Japanese talent that are bought into NXT, how is the way they've trained different to the way that NXT and the Performance Center trains their wrestlers? Is there a huge difference? Is there a huge sort of culture shift for them in the way they train? Do they have to sort of relearn things, or is it?
That's a question. And I worked with the lesser experienced girls, so I wasn't really working with the Japanese talent because a lot of them coming in, you know, they're fully trained. They've been through the dojo, you know, they've done all this stuff. A lot of it, I believe, is just getting them to understand the WWE style and, you know, the different rules and how things are done on TV there. You know, and how they structure it there. That's the biggest thing. The work ethic is there, the talent's there, you know, getting through the language barrier. And a lot of them, you know, work on learning English. And, you know, when Hideki Suzuki was there, he was super duper helpful and is like low key one of the funniest dudes I've ever met. He this day picks me up. Like he can just tweet me one thing and I'm already crying. And my husband will look over and he goes, Suzuki just text you. And I'm like, yup. Knows how to get me, and he wonderful human being. But yeah, it's a lot of, you know, just getting used to the US, making sure everybody's comfortable and just adjusting to the style. They have the cardio, they know how to do the moves, they just need to learn the new style.
Yeah, because that was one thing I remember when Hideo Itami came over. So Kenta, as obviously he was then, and there was huge fanfare when he came over from Noah. And obviously, I know you weren't there at that point, Allison. But one thing I always remember is one of the reasons that was put out for for him not really succeeding in the way that they thought he would was he really struggled to adapt to the American style, which I've always found really weird when you consider just how talented Kenta is. Yep. Like incredible in ring, but couldn't quite adapt to that US style. And obviously, we've seen Kyrie do it, we've seen Io Shirai do it, we've seen Shinsuke do it to, in my opinion, a lesser degree, but still done it, still multi-time champion. I'm interested to know, like, what is that US style? Like, what is so vastly different for them?
So really, you're playing to a TV audience. You have to know when you're structuring how to set it in a way that the cameras are going to get the best angles. And, you know, the storylines are a little different. Japan, yeah, they have storylines, but a lot of it's just, you know, athletes entering a ring. You know, it's getting that storyline going. It's knowing where to be, when to be there, and being able to do it while it's being broadcast live all over the world. So those are the challenges. And like, even in the time that I was there, I picked up so much like production stuff. You know, I had done producing before, but everything is adjusted in post. So if something doesn't go right, it's not terrible because we can smoke it in post. Or, you know, I have 3 different camera angles that they can look at, where live TV, you want to make sure that that camera person is right where you need to be. And I mean, I didn't work on main roster at all, but the camera crew for NXT is just fantastic. They, first off, they're all sweethearts. But they're so smart. And like the way they can change, you know, the way the directors are like, you know, camera this, camera that. I'm like, I would listen to it on the headset being, I don't know how they do this. My ADHD was like, what? Okay, sound bites. That's all you get from me. And so, you know, figuring out how to work through that. And, you know, as a producer, learning how to train people to do that. And so a lot of drills we did that I learned was just helping people always remember where the cameras are. Independent wrestling, we're playing to the live crowd, and then we have it, you know, filmed and they edit it, whatever we do. Well, here we're playing to, you know, the TV crowd, and the live crowd is, you know, it's the bonus. It's that adrenaline that keeps you going. But, you know, we're not really interacting with them as much as we would on a like standard independent show.
It's such an interesting jump from even like Ring of Honor. I imagine it's a huge jump. There's loads and loads of questions about how, you know, the current Stardom roster that, you know, I want to ask you and things like that. But Matt, is there anything else you want to ask, like bursting to ask?
I guess really just the only other question is obviously one of the biggest stars on TV now is Asuka, and you had a hand in booking her down in Shimmer when she was Kana. What was she like to deal with? Obviously, I've seen a whole bunch of her matches. I loved her matches with Sarah Del Rey. Those are the first matches I saw her. But what was it like having her part of the Shimmer roster?
I always had a great time with her. Pretty much backstage, it would be like, okay, Kana, we need this time, this opponent, this fit. Okay. And that's it. That's all I'm telling her. That I'm not telling her how to set this matchup. She knows what she's doing, right? You know, you have that freedom with certain people. But then, like, the side that you see outside of the ring, she is low-key hilarious. She's a good person. And we would have so much fun at the after parties. And, you know, we'd sit and fans would come up and they'd be like, you know, can I get you guys a drink? And, you know, I'm not a big drinker. So, and very rarely do you see me drink at Shimmer, but I'd be like, I'd look at Kana and I'd be like, tonight I get you mojitos. And she'd be like, huh? And I'm like, and then over mojitos and have a sip. She'd be like, so I got over. Order her drinks, and that's how we bonded. And but she was a delight to work for. I know there was talk of her having like not the best reputation coming in, or there was difficulties over in Japan. I never saw any of that, and I'm not discounting anything that happened before. But from the moment I met her up to today, like happily work with her again. She's just that cool.
Now, how about obviously this is a Stardom podcast, so I'm going to kind of rope that in.
Guys, y'all are going to have to school me on Stardom. I am so far behind and not anywhere fluent on the current roster. I know a lot of the Americans that went over. My Japanese knowledge is all like early days. Like we're talking Jumping Bomb Angels forward. So I'm the wrestling history gal. So That's fine. This opportunity to learn about who presently I should be watching.
Absolutely. We will definitely help you out. We will definitely help you. You know, and this is, I guess, the perfect opportunity to do the cheap plug. You should really purchase this gentleman's book, Living the Dream, Stardom's 10th Anniversary in Review. I always add that cheap plug in. You know, as a wrestler, you got to get your stuff over, your merch over, Allison. You know how it is.
Well, it's so funny you should say that, because I've been like low-key debating the last few days. I'm like, I want to bring the podcast back. Somebody gave me some advice on how to be able to do it on my own, because the production part is not, like the technology and production is not one of my strong suits. But I was like, you know what? I wonder if people would want to listen to me just reading old school wrestling books, particularly about like Mildred Burke's Queen of the Ring. Like, you don't have at nighttime. It's me and a little ASMR. Mildred Burke was champion, but Billy Wolf not having this. And then there was a fight in a restaurant, and this is how the title changed. Like, that's what I'm thinking of. You know, it's like an hour like a couple times a week where people just like start to go to sleep, and hopefully the osmosis things, and they wake up and they're like, man, Mildred Burke was a boss coming to the ring covered in diamonds. And yeah. And I'm like, and it would never be current books, because current books should be purchased. So I wouldn't do like Medusa's book, which is coming out the end of March. She'll love me for plugging that. But yeah, it'd be like old school books, like the Trish Stratus book, or go back and, you know, like do the Bella's book or do the Mildred Burke. You know, if Dan Murphy was cool with it, doing the what is it, the Sisterhood of the Squared Circle book, which is a fantastic reference for just women's wrestling history in general.
Allison reads out of Luthez book to you. there's your nighttime thing. You wake up and you start stretching people.
That would be so cool. I'm like during like, but I don't know if there's a market for it. I always think of these ideas and I'm like, is there really a market for it? But there probably is.
Find out.
There's a market for everything. Absolutely everything. If you can think of it, there's a market for it.
There you go. Listen to that guy right over there.
I used to joke with my Vegas kids about, you know, if this whole coaching thing doesn't work out, I'm going to open an OnlyFans. But I'm old, so like no one's really coming to look at me. It's literally just going to be only disappointed coach. And it's just pictures or videos of me going, sorry. Some kid screaming through a Walmart, and I'm and like, I feel like, and then Jay Vidal would be like, Mama, you know you would make like bank off that. And I'm like, yeah, but is there any coming back from that? I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you really hulk up after that? Or can you really fire yourself up everywhere else? And I don't know, you know. I want to find out.
You know what they're doing on the other side. And yeah, that's cool. And I'm making money. And like, I don't want to think about that. But then I'm like, yeah, I'm really pandering to the one thing I try never to pander to as a wrestler. But, you know, Mama needs her Botox.
But anywho, I guess my question was, we went down a rabbit hole there, didn't we?
Warn you that I digress.
I know how you work.
That's my sequel to my book, but I digress.
My question was, when you were involved in Shimmer, booking Shimmer, did you ever contact anybody from Stardom, or maybe bringing like a Mayu over, or an Arisa, or and you know, anybody in that nature, like a Getsu?
So that would be a Dave Prazak question. I rarely involved myself in bringing the Japanese talent over. That was a lot of Dave and his connections over there. Were we always excited to have Japanese talent come in? Yes. If there was ever a weekend where we didn't have Japanese talent coming in, the locker room would let us know how disappointed they were with that. When the talent would come in, our, you know, the American bound group or the Canadian bound groups would be like fighting over, like, do we get a shot? Do we get a chance? I'm like, do you know how many years it took for me to wrestle someone from Japan? I had to retire just to get Hamada. So yes, they were very sought after. And I mean, I'm trying to think I don't think we ever had a negative experience with any of the Japanese talent. They were just fantastic. And sadly, I wasn't there when Aja Kong came in, because my flight got canceled. It was like one of the first Shimmer shows I ever missed. And it was because of storms and flights got canceled. And I was like stuck in Vegas. And I was very sad, because I had warned them that when Aja Kong was in the ring, I would be running in, I would be taking a back fist, and I'd be powdering right back to the back. I don't care where it made sense in the match. I just want to know that at some point in my career, I ate the back fist.
I feel like that is a career highlight, definitely.
Oh, that's even if it knocks a couple other ones out, like that.
I mean, she is, without a shadow of a doubt, she's in my top 3 greatest ever. She's just absolutely incredible. I mean, you've mentioned Aja Kong, you've mentioned Kana. Who else sort of stands out from your time? And we'll sort of bounce around the different promotions, but Shimmer especially, who sort of stands out that came over?
And I'm thinking of them, and I'm having one of those moments where it's like, oh my God, I'm going to pronounce their name wrong. Oh my God, am I even getting their name right? Hiroyo was awesome. Coming out with the stuff like that. And I'm so angry that her name escapes me, because I see her, and you guys are going to have to get Kelly Skater's partner. Why can't I think of her name?
Oh,
Green Global Gangstas. I see her like right in front of me, but I cannot. I'm going to be so mad. we hang up from here, I'm going to be like, damn it, that was her name.
We have some of that. Yeah. We're very good with the Stardom stuff, Alice, and anything outside of Stardom stuff, we're kind of touch and go. But I know a lot of our Joshi fans are yelling at us and probably throwing things at their phones right now.
I can hear Velkage just yelling on the Discord.
What are you doing when you have this opportunity?
Oh my God. I literally can see her. I can see her. Why can't I think of her name? Because I was, holy shit, she was so good. She's one of my tag champs. Why can't I? Oh, see, I hate this. When I put myself on the spot to think of things like this, I blank.
Put too much pressure on yourself. I'm looking at Rob's eyes. Rob's doing his research right now. He's the genius when it comes to the I'm just the beat up wrestler that, talks about arm bars.
Nakagawa.
Yes.
Tomoka Nakagawa. I knew it was Tomoka, but all I could think in my head was Inaba, and I was like, it's not her.
Yeah. No.
Should have been 10.
Oh my gosh, I thought she was great. Hamada, obviously, because Hamada's like my top 3. That was my first wrestling crush. Well, it was my first like wrestling performance crush. My first wrestling crush was obviously Ricky Steamboat.
Obviously.
My all-time favorite wrestler.
Were you there the day I met him at Ring of Honor, Matt?
Sure was.
Do you remember him, Matt?
Yes, you were. I don't remember how you met, but I remember you fangirled out. Like, again, I like throwing on my 80s references. Like you were, 10 years old at a New Kids on the Block concert. Like, yeah.
So you don't know the actual story of what happened.
I know you told me. You either told me that day or the next time that you came into coach, but remind me because so what was the actual? Oh, was it the bathroom?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, tell the story. Tell the story. Now I remember. It's like 15 years ago. New
Jersey, Rexplex, Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Love that.
I don't know why. I can remember that, but I can't freaking remember Tomoko's name. God damn it. Oh, sorry. Swear jar. And so I was in the bathroom getting changed. And there was a running joke between me and Tracy Brooks that we were like, Steamboat's coming in the locker room. And we're just wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah. And I'm getting changed. And I don't know what was wrong with the door, but like either the lock was broken or didn't fully latch. And I'm in there, not really dressed. And Steamboat walks in. And I was shocked, not realizing it was him at first, slammed the door in his face. And then I just sit there and I clutch myself going, this is not how I wanted him to see me like this. Oh my God. And then I'm like, I'm shaking. I get my prophecy gear on and I peek my head out. And there's Punk going, how did you hit Steamboat in the face with the bathroom door? I'm like, Punk, he wants it on me. Tracy had to console me, but I know deep down she had the advantage. The whole night. Oh my gosh. Like I went over and I apologized. And then the rest of the night I would look at him and I'd be like I make eye contact with him. So that's how I met, Steamboat the Dreamboat. Little baby Danger is still traumatized.
Understandably, I feel. Go on, Matt.
My story from that, because you just triggered something. Obviously, I met Steamboat because he was working with Punk. He was doing that whole thing with Punk. So we got to do a seminar with him, an all-weekend seminar, and he was always great to us, giving us advice, and Steamboat's just the man. But just remind me of my story with him. I remember walking into the locker room, and there was one, and again, I'm just out of the school. I'm lowest of low on the card, and I walk in, and there's one empty chair, and sitting in a triangle right where that empty chair was Steamboat, Bobby Heenan, and Jim Cornette. And I'm like, well, this is an empty chair. Nobody's here. So I look around and I go, who's sitting here? And it was either Jimmy Jacobs or BJ Whitmer. I want to say it was Jimmy Jacobs said, hey, kid, it looks like you're sitting there. So I was like, okay. So I sat in the chair and I was changing and I put on my headphones like I was listening to music, but I turned the music all the way down and I just listened to Steamboat, Jim Cornette, and Bobby Heenan just tell stories.
Oh my gosh,
Ring of Honor was great. We had such a great time. We didn't realize what we had. Me and Hagedorn talk about it all the time. We never took pictures of with Punk or training with Kenta came in to do a seminar with Bryan Danielson and they taught me kicks for a half an hour. That was just an ordinary day. Look back on it, it's like, man, I wish I would have taken a few pictures. And that's why he always says, and you say it too, take all the pictures.
Take all the pictures. So, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because in my memory, this was a real thing. Was there kind of like an unwritten rule when Steamboat was at Ring of Honor that somebody would ask him a question because then we all knew that he would get in the ring and just talk about it for 30 minutes, but he would answer it for everybody?
Pretty much. Like he would like because nobody who in that locker room had more knowledge than him, or maybe even the history of wrestling. So you would ask him the smallest thing, and you were like, all right, I'm asking him this question. This is the answer I would like to get, but he would give you this answer. Like he would expand everything out.
Everybody, he'd be like, all right, guys, gather in. This is a good question. And then he would just teach everybody.
Yeah. I remember when we did the weekend seminar with Steamboat, all I wanted to learn was the arm drag. All I wanted to learn. I remember we came back that weekend and you were either teaching the class or we bumped into you. Like, how was the weekend seminar with Steamboat? So it was great. We learned so much, but he didn't teach the arm drag. And I'll never forget, you're like, he's going to take that arm drag to the grave. He's not going to show anybody that arm drag.
Yep. I mean, that he was gay in that arm drag. Serena Deeb gave it a good shot, though. Like, I would say out of my era of women, Deeb had like the best arm drag.
Yeah, still does, yeah.
I'm so glad Serena Deeb's getting more recognition now in AEW because she's always been fantastic. And the fact that she is getting more recognition now is excellent. Really, really cool.
And
sorry, go on.
Correctly, she's the one who introduced Bayley to Shimmer, if I remember correctly.
Oh.
Dave Prazak, I want to say, like, I don't know if Serena was mentoring her, but when Bayley was Davina Rose, I want to say Serena Deeb that put the thumbs up on that, and that's how we got the future Bayley.
Wow.
I mean, even just looking at down the like all-time roster of Shimmer, it's like a proper who's who of the wrestling industry. Like, it's incredible. You've got like the likes of Aja Kong, you've got Dynamite Kansei, which is amazing. I don't know if you ever met her or if she was on the same card that you missed a flight on, but she's incredible. Mayumi Ozaki. There's just some incredible people there. What I wanted to ask is, and this might seem like a really random question.
Okay.
Did you wrestle on the Nanae Takahashi 10th anniversary show?
Sure did.
How did that happen? Like, I don't know how, like, explain.
Okay. So my personal belief is it was a thank you from 01, and I could be wrong about this. When, you know how we used to have the Wrestle Houses met?
Yeah.
There's like Wrestle House Indiana, Wrestle House Pennsylvania, the notorious Wrestle House, which was the one that was me, Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, and then a random
rotating door would be Austin Aries would stop in from time to time. Sweeney, yeah.
Oh, the Chikara guys would hide in the cornfield. This house, okay, real quick, let me give you a feeling of this house. Notorious Wrestle House. It was because it was 187 street name, right? It was surrounded on two sides by cornfields, like directly up to the proper line. The house next to us was falling down, and so pretty sure somebody died there. And then just more cornfields. And so I remember one of the Chikara guys thinking it was funny. He would hide in the cornfield and then jump out as people would pull up. And I remember doing dishes, and Icarus was standing in the window, and I looked up, and I just, yeah, he got me. So okay, back to where we were. I digress. So bring me back.
Nanae Takahashi. 01. Favorite of 01.
They had 01 had sent some talent over. I remember it was Jet. I don't remember his wrestling name, but he was Jet. And he was doing some shows and stuff like that, and he was staying with us, and he was doing a great job. Really nice guy. But he ended up getting hurt, like his lung collapsed randomly at training. It was the most random thing. His lung he had one of those spontaneous pneumothoraxes, right? And so he got rushed to the hospital, and he was in there, I want to say, for 9 days. And every single day, with the exception of one day, I was at the hospital with him. And they had somebody translating and stuff like that. We made sure he was taken care of. And then he got cleared. He got out of the hospital. First match back in the U.S., other lung collapsed. Oh. He literally took a face bump, other lung collapse. So now it's like, oh my God, we got to get this lung inflated, send him back to Japan. And my understanding was that the office was, because the office always very, very kind to me, because Steve's sister, but
Sure.
like they were very kind to me. And I think that's what gave me the opportunity, because I did the Nanae Takahashi retirement show the first night, and then the second night was the Shinya Hashimoto memorial show. It was a year after Hashimoto had passed. Which I'm also glad that I was there, because I got to be there with my brother for that. And Hashimoto's passing, they were very close, so that was tough on my brother. And I am that very protective little sister. I am very ride or die for my older brother. He's one of my best friends, and I love him to pieces. And so being able to be there for him was a big thing for me. But so Nanae Takahashi show, were we in Sheba Park for that? I remember the venue. I don't remember the city. And I don't remember the girl that I worked with, but she was really, really good. And there's like a couple of stories attached to this. The first one being my brother ribbing me, not once, but twice.
Sounds like something Steve would not do.
Oh my God. So first thing he says to me is, hey man, she's going to get a lot of streamers. So I think it'd be really funny and good if you start batting them out of the air like a cat, right? But he did not tell me that the streamers over there are much more, I'm going to go with resilient, very different kind of material. So, batting them like a cat, right? And next thing I know is I'm cocooned in these streamers. And now tight, and I'm going, oh no. And that's not what I was saying, but I was like, this is not good. So the young girls were coming over and they were trying to get me out, couldn't get me out. So somebody had the genius idea of, okay, let's pull on it. They pull on it. I fall down in the ring, slide out, bump onto the floor, and I'm laying on the floor screaming, Steve, help! Well, they're trying to cut me out of these streamers. And he's standing over me just laughing. Would not help me in my life. And I'm just like, you jerk.
We would have.
Then he went on to rib me a second time in that same match. Steve was my second at ringside, which is pretty cool when your big brother's your second, right? Especially in a country where he's well-known and popular. And I'm working with the girl, and she was, I wish to God I could remember her name. I'll have to Google it.
Saki Maimori.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
It's all right.
Very, very good to work with. She was very good to me. And so we did the thing, the really popular thing where it's like, oh, we're going to get the girl and like a group of us. We're going to put her in the hold and then everybody's going to pose, blah, blah. I was like, Steve, we should totally do that. He goes, let's do it. And then we do it and we do the pose and cameras are flashing in the middle of the match. And then he was like, how he did the Carino Ichiban, right? Mm. Well, he had taught me a Japanese obscenity. And then I yelled the obscenity in Japanese, which one, big no. Ironically enough, it was I worked in Japan. He would go, no, it's Ichiban. And I'm like, what? He goes, it's Ichiban. And then the girl broke free, bumped us both, and then we went into it, like fun little hope spot. But I said the S word in Japanese on Samurai TV. Thank you. Did I mention I'm ride or die for him? Do you remember that time you ribbed me? So we were there as REM. Do you remember the Real Evil Monsters? It was a short-lived, probably because I cussed, very short-lived was Amazing Kong, Trinisha, aka Panther Claw. I don't know if y'all recall her. She was TNA for a hot bit. She was a Diva Search girl that had her first wrestling match was literally Japan. I'm trying to describe her to her without bringing up drama that could get me a lot of heat with a certain former Olympic wrestler. Raja Kong, I think was her name at TNA. No.
Yeah, okay. Because I know you're connecting the dots. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I see where you're
going. It's all coming back to me now. So we were the Real Evil Monsters, REM, and pretty much we were the lackeys to Kong. And keep in mind, I love Kia. I love Kia to pieces. She's such a good person. And so she gets there, and I had just gotten off the plane in Narita, and they drove me straight to the 01 offices. And they're like, yeah, we need you to cut a promo. I'm like, sure, I'm okay. And so I'm with these two tall women of color. So they stuck me in the middle. That was their idea, not mine. Because I just kind of looked at them. I'm like, is this okay, you guys? Like, I'm not trying to cause any problems. And then they have us cut a promo, and we're in front of the Nanae Takahashi's poster, which if you've seen the 10th anniversary poster, it was made like a concert, like she's a rock star. And she's like this, and she's holding a microphone. So I'm cutting my promo, and I feel Kia next to me, like kind of moving around. I'm like, she's trying to make me crack. Like I'm there's no corpsing. I'm a Karina. We're doing this in one shot, right? And so I don't break. And then she stops, turns around, goes into her thing. And I just kind of look behind me. She had changed the microphone into a twig and berries. And so you see the camera, and I'm like, there's bangers and mash behind my head in Sharpie. And I'm like, I haven't met Takahashi yet. And I'm like, she's going to hate me the second she meets me. Oh no. I'm like, this is how I die. I die in Japan. I went out, like a boss. But yeah, so it was a very uncomfortable trip.
What was it like working that match? Because obviously, I think you faced Nene in the sixth woman with Amazing Kong and Panther Grow. We see her now because she's still going at age 45 and still going strong, very much so.
Yeah,
right.
Champion in Stardom. Yeah,
absolutely, tag champion in Stardom. Like, what's it like being in the ring with her, and more important, how hard does she hit?
So, I have not the best recollection of that match. We had an issue where, I'm only 6 years in, but like I'm still learning, right? Still learning the Japanese style. Kong's cemented there, and knows a little bit of Japanese where I know very little.
Apart from that one swear word that your brother taught you, obviously.
Ichiban.
And so I remember being very, very nervous because I already was, something was bothering me in my abdominal area. And I don't know, I discovered later that one, I ended up with costal contritis, which is still lingers to this day, which is an inflammation of the lining of the sternum and rib cage, which, I broke my sternum, I think a year after that match. So it kind of tracks. I remember being really, really nervous. And then there was an accident on the highway. So they didn't get there till like moments before our match. And they had called the whole match in the car and came in there like, this is what you're doing, but they're telling us in Japanese. I have no idea what's going on. So I'm literally walking to this match. I have no clue what's happening. I do not know what to expect. I remember being held down, frog splashed, and then I felt boom, and it was an abdominal muscle tear. Because I was like this, I couldn't protect myself.
Sure.
I just took the whole thing, and whatever was bothering me in my abs, boom, it was gone. I felt that baby tear, and I'm like, oh no. And I feel my body like inadvertently curling up. Well, don't they pull me out again? And I'm literally going, Kong, I can't do this. Like, I'm hurt. And, I'm not really one to like get out of it. But at this point, like I'm struggling to breathe. I'm like trying to get to her. I take a second splash. I roll out and I'm just down and I'm trying to get up. And I guess they like beat me on the outside to keep me out, which I was blessed for that. And so the match was not what I've wanted it to be. I know all six of us were very disappointed in how the match ended up being. And it was just, I was just kind of doomed from the start. And I felt so bad that I went to every veteran in the locker room, in the 01 locker room, and apologized for my terrible performance. Nothing is scarier than going up to Otani and just like trying to say in Japanese, because I learned it in Japanese, how to say, I am sorry. I apologize. I hope I apologize for embarrassing you. Humbling. So yeah, if I knew than what I know now, it would have been a completely different situation. But I just, you know, it sucked.
Yeah, it sounds that way. I mean, to tear an abdominal muscle is bloody painful anyway. I mean, I've had costochondritis. But to have that and then sort of to then take a second splash on top of it, and it's Japan, so there's no punches pulled. That must be, I can
and they had
always empathize.
They had no idea. There was nothing unsafe about the splash. It was perfect. It was beautiful, like exactly where you would want it to be, picture perfect, right? It just, me not being able to communicate that, hey, something's wrong, I need to veer off. And it was one of those, like, I can get through it, right? I busted a knee, I got through it. The only thing I never was able to finish was the collarbone and sternum break, but that was going into the finish anyway. I would not have been able to continue, but every match I've continued, like biting my tongue off, continued, concussion, continued, like broken noses twice, continued. That was the one time where I was like, ooh, I could have gotten it, but we had no way to verbalize to each other that, hey, I got to change this on the fly, but it's okay because I already don't even know what we're doing. I'm lost, just absolutely lost. So yeah, that was a bummer. And then it was my last time in Japan. Thanks, Steve.
You just put him over. I buried him.
Do you remember that time you made me cuss in Japan and now I never went back? Thanks, bro.
Last thing about that trip to Japan, I promise, because it sounds like
you're giving her PTSD, Rob. It's a great podcast of 5 minutes ago.
Let's be honest. It's going to be a 3-parter because I got stories for days.
So obviously the 0-1 match we'll sort of steer clear from, but that match with Saki Maimura, you said obviously she treated you very well. How difficult, and I know this might sound like a really stupid question and I apologize for this, how difficult is it, and I've asked Matt this as well, how difficult is it wrestling someone who doesn't speak your language in a country that you aren't familiar with in terms of the customs or the wrestling, or haven't wrestled necessarily that style before? How difficult is that?
So I got very lucky in that for that particular match, we actually got to meet up at the dojo and like get a feel for each other. We got to do 1 or 2 workouts, I think, maybe more. We actually got to like work out and train together. So we got a good feel. And I was always taught, if you know who your opponent is going, if I'm going to a show and I know who my opponent is, I've studied that opponent. I'm walking in, I know their moveset already. Like they can tell it to me, but I already know it. Like that's the way I was always prepared. And this was in a time where, remember, Matt, the early 2000s, they were never really announcing who you were against. I more often than not walked into shows with no idea who my opponent was. But whenever I had the opportunity to know, I did my research. So I did my research on her. We got to spend time together in the dojo. So I felt very comfortable, very, very safe. Now, there's other times where it's, it's a little hard. You kind of look at each other, but you work through it. I've worked with, I teamed with someone who's hard of hearing. So I know if I have to like call something on the fly, I know I got to make sure it's in the correct ear. My Vegas kids and I, we actually learned a little bit of sign language. One of the wrestler's girlfriends is a ASL teacher. So she taught us some signs that we could do. So if we couldn't shout something to each other, whether it was training or in a match, we could literally catch each other's eye and do sign language to each other.
Wow.
And be able to sign. And so, and that's one of the beautiful things about sign language. In fact, if you are familiar with Erica Yan, when she was with, she mostly did 205 Live, and I think she did some Level Up before she go. When she would do her entrance and do that, that's literally the sign for why. Doing it in a smile, which was her whole thing. She always had that smile on her hand. But also, one of the things I wanted to do was learn her birth name, like learn the name that she goes by. Because I know a lot of times people come over and we anglicize their names, and I'm like, if that's what they want, cool. But if they want to be spoken by, their original name, like I make a point of learning it. And she was teaching me the inflection that was like a boom, so it would go down and up. So that's how it
Right.
ended up becoming her
Oh,
whole
wow.
entrance thing was her
Ah,
teaching me how to say her shoot name.
ah,
Yeah.
that's quite
And,
cool.
and to kind of just piggyback on what Allison was just saying, yeah, 20 years ago, if I messaged a promoter said, hey, you're going to be on the show. Here's your pay, yada, yada, yada. Well, who am I wrestling? I said, you're wrestling Rob Goodwin. If I don't know who he is,
Yeah.
there's no YouTube, there's no Twitter. You can go on their MySpace page, but if you don't have a DVD or VHS on that person, you're kind of just getting to the show as early as you possibly can. And you had to use MapQuest. Remember that? Remember for the phones? So it would tell you 3 hours to get there, but you know damn well it's going to be 3.5, 3:45. You get there early and be like, okay, who's Rob Goodwin? Okay, it's me and you. We got 8 to 10 minutes. The finish is this. What do you do? And then you kind of just figure it out there. That's I would always try to make it a habit to get up to shows really early. 1, to get a workout into the ring. 2, I'm knowing I'm going to hit traffic. 3, Rob will back me up on this. I'm a time fanatic. If I'm not early, I'm late. And
Exactly.
and just because you're trying to work stuff out, because it's like, okay, do I have any DVDs of this guy or any VHSs? Because there's not now. All of a sudden, you're wrestling Allison Danger. Okay, did I just go on her Twitter page and there's highlights? There's this, there's that. I go on YouTube. I'm like, okay, I have a good idea. They do this style work with what I do. Okay, I have an idea what I'm doing, and then you kind of go from there. But yeah, it's just crazy how fast the world has come along in 15 or 20 years.
Absolutely.
A little further than that is, especially as the women, we were all being taught the exact same thing, regardless of the school. Everybody was being taught all of Lita's repertoire, the occasional Trish Stratus thing, and maybe a little bit of Victoria. But like a lot of places were skipping, the basics, the lockups and stuff like that. Luckily for me, Mike Keener would not allow that. He was like, no, you're going to know your technical game in and out. And it helped like give me a love of technical wrestling. But yeah, you'd walk in and be like, okay, what do you do? So I do a head scissors and a Rana. And I'm like, dang it, I do that too. Okay. And so it's trying to find something different. That's where like I really got into tape studying and, the notorious Wrestle House. Because
oh boy, the tapes.
the tapes. Hero.
Go ahead.
Still does this. I don't know for sure, but I imagine he still does this because he has got like a crazy good mind for wrestling history. And I bet you could text him and be like, hey, Chris, like this wrestler this year. Oh yeah, it was this is how long it went. Like he knows. He's probably, I imagine he's a savant about that stuff. But Chris Hero had this very famous or well-known within wrestling tape collection, and like you could sign out the tapes from him,
like a library,
borrow them. Like he had
wow.
And it would line the living room and into the kitchen, just bookshelves. And then started getting DVDs, so there would always be stacks of DVDs. And so there was a lot of wrestling study going on between Hero, Claudio, me, and then whoever else stayed. So that's where I really got to start watching wrestling and getting a feel. My brother hooked me up with a lot of like Arceon stuff, and I want to say his name was George, not George South, but he was a tape trader named George.
We have something on the message boards because tape trading was big back then.
Yeah, he
didn't Hero
Mima like Shimoda stuff.
Remember when Hero got the Johnny Saint stuff? Because nobody had it. It was like super secret. When he got the Johnny Saint stuff, it was like super secret. It was like it was almost like, from what I understand, I think Claudia was like, it was like a drug dealer or something. It was all this Johnny Saint stuff. It was like, you might even been there. It was like, shh, don't tell anybody you have this. And it was like, oh my goodness.
Who introduced me to Johnny Saint.
Like, yeah, he worked Chikara. He worked a whole bunch of Chikara shows.
Oh yeah, and of course I never got to meet him. I would be somewhere else. When I got to the PC and would guest coach, and then when I got signed, he would never be there at the same time. And I'm like, at least Johnny Moss was there, but like Johnny Saint was never there. And we're like 2 ships passing in the night, which is funny because, and you might have actually met him before I did. If you ever, did you do Chikara at all, Matt?
I did Chikara a lot, yeah. The infamous Necro Butcher match. That was me and Franco. How can you forget that? I still get questions on that.
So there's a big chance you met my husband before I did.
Oh yes, yeah. Claudia's first tag partner. Yeah, Swiss Money Holding. Absolutely, yeah.
Every time he would come to the U.S. and they would do Swiss Money Holding for like Chikara and stuff like that, I was always booked somewhere else. So that man would stay in the house that I shared with Chris and Claudio I saw pictures of him with his girlfriend at the time. I remember when Claudio was sad that they broke up because it was a sad moment because Claudio really cared about them both. So I saw pictures of my husband 3 years before I actually met him. This guy, I should point this way, this guy actually met everybody. Chikara knew him before I did. I didn't meet him until Germany. And I saw him from across the room, and I was standing with, and you're going to laugh at this name, Emil Satochi.
Okay. Yes.
I was fun of Satochi.
Best abs in the business.
Always
and he ate like crap. You go out, he's got to have an insane diet, and he'd be eating McDonald's all the time. Like, how's that possible? Piss me off.
He'd be tape watching, and he'd be laying on the ground doing crunches. I got to keep up with the crunches. The ladies love it. I'm like, oh my God, Satochi. I like Satochi, but he's a lot of human to deal with. So I was making fun of pants. I looked across the room. My future husband walked in, and I remember going, oh, wow. Yeah. So I tackled him.
That's what you would do. This is pro wrestling, Rob. This is the nuttiness that goes on inside these heads.
I literally jumped arms, and I'm like, the infamous Marco or the infamous Ares. And I was like, I'm Claudio's roommate. And like, we had instant messaged, AOL instant messaged. Like, twice.
I remember that.
Time was me going, hey, I think we're going to be on the same show in Germany. And he fabed it. And to this day, I still give him hell for it. He fabed my aim, and then we tackled him. And then we realized in the locker room, we both had the very same Claudio Castagnoli shirts. And that picture that we took together in those shirts that we sent to Claudio is still framed in our bedroom today. And yeah, I was gone. I was like,
does Claudio have the long hair in that picture? Claudio with the long hair.
Yeah, back in the day.
I still can't get my head around Claudio with long hair. Like, I look at him now, and it hit the idea of him with hair does not seem right. Some people just pull off being bald really, really well, and I think he is one of them. Like, it just suits him.
But they're fit for him at the time.
Yeah, he knew how to change with the times. He's so smart.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's how I met my husband. Everybody met him. And then here's the funny story, because I love her to death, and I love saying this. That girl that was in the photo with him that I saw when Claudio first moved to the U.S. and we were sharing a house together, right? She's now one of my dearest friends, and we go on vacation together. And she is the only woman, if I were to go out tomorrow, she's the only woman allowed to help raise my child with my husband.
Look at that.
There you go.
The best. And okay, you might remember this guy. Do you remember Tassilo from WXW? Come over and do Mid-South every now and then, really tall referee.
Oh, okay, the referee. Yeah. I mean, IWA Mid-South, yes.
That's her husband now.
Really?
4 of us take the kid and we go on vacation in Europe.
So wild. Wrestling's the best.
Like, I call him my brother-in-law now, which is funny because we didn't like each other when we first met, and now the pieces and consider him like they're our family. She's my Swister wife.
Love it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so many. Again, you start remembering these things. Yeah, I remember you start talking about the tape trade. I remember correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Hero make like a 4 or 5 hour Dragon Gate comp where it's all just crazy spots?
Yep.
And then when Skida came over to train, he showed him, and he's like, yeah, I can show you that. So whenever Skida would do the Chikara seminars, we would just learn these crazy mind melting, like technical wrestling thing that turned into some random pin. Like what a genius Skida was, or probably still is.
I gave him a heart attack once.
For real?
No, not really. But
Jesus.
So, like I like to think I'm a nice person, but in the day I was a little bit of a hothead. I like to say I'm Canadian till I'm not, and then you meet the Philly side of me. So like part of me is really nice, but the Philly and the hockey player, I mean, if I'm mad, I was quick. Like it was like boom. And so I remember being mad at 2 of the Dutch kids that came over. I'm not even going to mention their names because they don't deserve it. They were very disrespectful to Claudio one day, and Claudio's such a nice guy that,
the nicest.
Defender.
The nicest in wrestling. Too nice to be in wrestling.
And I remember I was just to the point where I lost my temper, and I yelled so loud at one of them that Sky that was in the shower, he actually screamed and comes running out in a towel, clutching his chest, going, "What's going on?" You know, and I'm just like, kind of like, everything's good. I'm mad, and he goes, "Oh, oh, oh, Cassie, you scared me." Like, I don't want to be.
I think I remember somebody telling me this story. I think you might have been you. I was like, wow, she's mad at the. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember who those two Dutch guys are. Again, I won't mention who my guess is.
They're not. They get no notoriety. I want to say the one was still in wrestling years ago, like when I think when I met the hubby, but the other one I think retired. He quit, I think, as soon as he got back to the Netherlands.
From that telling off you gave him.
There was a lot of stuff built up to that. Because remember, Osugi would come over. Milanito collection.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Milano's Mini. Milano, who's a trainee at the Stardom Dojo. Yeah. He would come with his. It was almost like his Mini with the fake dog and everything. Yeah, Milanito. Yeah.
I remember seeing Milano Collection AT the first time I went to Japan. It's the only time I got to go to Kurigan Hall was as a spectator, but they brought us over. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go see Torimon. This is so cool. We saw the Kurigan. He came out. I fell in love. And I would low key hit on him. I'm not even going to try and fave it. Like he would come. It was never serious because I was dating someone, but like, he came over. It was right around my birthday. And I looked at my boyfriend. I go, is that my gift? Is that my gift? That's my gift. Come on, hall pass. That's my gift, right? I would never do it, but like, and then I remember Milano would like play into it, and he like one day pretended to drop a quarter, and he was just like
bend over.
I'm just like
do that today.
Yep. We're good because he was just such a good looking guy, but he was fun. They were fun, but Milanito was wonderful. I loved when the knees would come over. Yeah, I always had a lot of fun with Skyda. Yeah.
Well, now I got to ask the question: Milano or Ricky Steamboat? You can only pick one.
Oh. So Steamboat's got the gray hair, and I'm like, if it's gray, I'm here to play.
She said 20 years ago.
I see a today picture of Milano. I need to do my due diligence and see proper pictures.
We can dig it up because does he still do some of the commentary, Rob, on some of the Stardom shows?
Ricky Steamboat?
No, Milano.
I was just going to say. Milano. Does he?
I think sometimes
I know he did.
New Japan shows.
I know, but I'm good after this is done, y'all.
That's right. We're gonna give Allison a whole. I think part 2 of the interview is going to be. We're gonna give you a whole bunch of Stardom matches to watch, and then we're just gonna be like, "What did you think?" You know, because you said you want to get caught up, and we'll hook you up.
Yeah, that's gonna be the part 2 because let's be honest, this is gonna be a mini series.
Absolutely. I've had the best time ever just listening to you two.
Aww.
Honestly, this has been so much fun. I'm going to ask just one more question, Allison, and then we'll let you go. It's sort of a two-parter.
Okay.
Obviously, you did work at Shimmer, and now are you still working with Women's Wrestling Army?
Yes.
So, two-part question. The first one, with Shimmer, obviously, a lot of girls got sent over to Japan, people like Kelly Slater, Chili and Melissa, people like that. How did you, not necessarily choose, but how did it come about that those girls would go? What was the selection process for sending those girls over?
So I believe, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Cheerleader Melissa had a lot to do with things. I think she helped book the foreign talent with Stardom. Because it was Rossi, right? Does he still?
Yeah.
Rossi. So, because Rossi, I worked with him at A to Z, and Melissa met him when she was over. Who is she? I think she was over at the same time Sarah Del Rey, but she was doing like the 3 months over there. I don't remember if it was Arcion or A to Z, but her and Sarah would do 3 months there and then come back. Then I think Sarah would like go on to Mexico and then they'd go back. I only was ever over there for a week with A to Z, but Melissa and Rossi still had that connection. So I believe that was a lot of helping people get into Stardom. And then I remember Hashi would come over and he would help like introduce people. And it was just a good working relationship between Shimmer, Stardom, and, you know, other companies. And now like even some of the younger girls that come through Shimmer have gone over, like Nicole Savoy, Ruby Ruby Soho. Don't let me get it wrong. You know,
Like when she's Heidi Lovelace, I think, right?
that
She was.
Yeah.
when she was over there. Yeah. So
Dakota Kai or Evie, as she was
yeah,
then.
that's when she was then. And yeah, the really, really good people got to go over there, which was awesome. I think for me, my Japanese connection was Steve. And in fact, my very first Japanese tour was kind of gifted to me by Daphne. And this is the one that hurts, that it was summer of 2003, and she got signed to OVW. And she messaged me and she's like, I got signed. You don't know that. They're telling me I have to pull off this Japanese tour. I'm supposed to be doing this very first A to Z show. They're bringing me and another American over, like as the attractions. I told them to bring my sister, my crabby sister. That was our whole thing. Like, you might have remember, Matt, when her and I would do the crab thing in the ring.
Is that what that's from? I never look at that.
Yes.
Wow. I remember that. I remember what that. I thought maybe you were like low key waving to somebody in the third row that owed you $10 or something. I don't know. Wow. Now I know.
Yeah. She was jokingly doing that on the ropes one day, and I was like, we got to work that. So every match we ever did, somehow the crab would get in there. And like literally up to our very last conversation, the last time we said, I love you, we called each other crabby sister. But she had told Japan, she's like, take her. She's a Carino, blah, blah, blah. And so I had 6 days notice and I was on my way to A to Z. So Daphne gave me my very first tour. The day that I got the call that I was officially being offered the contract at WWE, because I'd been guest coaching almost a year at that point. I think the running joke was the only guest coach that came in more than me was Dave Taylor. 4 coaching runs, and I got to do a tryout unsigned. I got to do a tryout as a coach in Vegas. Like, so I felt at that point I was like, I'm confident I'm getting there. The day I got the call to say, you've got the contract, it was Matt Bloom that called me, and he was like, how you feel? I go, I feel good, coach. I'm on my way to Shannon's funeral.
Oh man.
So the day that I was flying to Atlanta to say goodbye, WWE. And I was like, and you know, I'm not a big afterlife person, you know, I'm absolutely not religious at all, but I was like, I'm sitting there going, all right, if this is real, you got me. How dare you get the last say in this? Like, the night that she passed, I was actually with Sin Bodhi and I was in his tattoo chair. And so I got this that was supposed to be my Shimmer tattoo. Can you see it? Can I see it?
Yep, can see it now, yeah.
Yeah. That is now my Shannon tattoo. And it's stars exploding, and it means like the struggles we've had mentally and how we fracture and stuff like that. But it's done in the Shimmer colors, watercolor style. And yeah, it was supposed to be small. And yeah, I remember trying to reach her while I was in the tattoo chair. So this will always be my Daphne tattoo now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tribute. It really is. My final question. So
yeah, we can't end it on that, y'all. We got
no, don't worry.
Bring it up. We got to bring it up.
Obviously, you're still doing work with Women's Wrestling Army, which I did clarify earlier because I was like, I'm sure she is, but I just need to clarify.
Yeah.
If you were to open up some sort of relationship with Stardom nowadays, is there anybody on the WWE roster that you think straight away, I'd love to send her to Japan? I think she'd do brilliant work in Japan. Who sort of jumps to mind?
Zoe Stark would be the first one from NXT I would send over. And you know, people are going to say I'm biased because I did help train her. Because of her connection, her original trainer was Tom Howard, who was Steve's partner in 01. And at that point, I wasn't taking on anybody in Vegas. I was like, no, we met right before the pandemic at the disco hit. And yeah, so she would be one of the first ones I would send. Ivy Nile, I think, would do good over there. I think Lash Legend would be a hoot over because she's so charismatic and she can do all the like tall woman things. So I feel like she would do really, really well there. I would say in a year or so, Tatum Paxley, I would send. I'd give her more time in the U.S. because she came into wrestling as a non-wrestler. She was a power lifter. I'm trying to think who else is down there. Those are the ones off the top of my head, because I'm trying to keep in mind that there are a bunch on the roster right now who've already been. Japan, like Kaylee Ray. She's already been to Japan. So those would be the ones right off the top of my head. But definitely Ash, Ivy, Zoe.
Ivy's one that I know is getting a lot of buzz at the moment. Really, really quick sort of progress through the ranks. And I know that obviously she did a shot for, was it ROW she did a shot for?
It was Booker T's group. Is that ROW?
Yes.
Yeah, ROW, yeah.
Reality of Wrestling, yeah. And I know that, everyone was like, oh my God. So, yeah, I'd like to see her, to be fair, in Stardom. Now, Matt, unless you've got any other questions you'd like to ask.
Well, I mean, we kind of roll this in towards the end because she can do her plugs. Allison, did I see you that you're booked for a GCW show coming up? Are you getting back into the ring there, Miss Danger?
Maybe. We're gonna see me at GCW in Atlanta, April 21st. I'm trying to think what else I have coming. When does this drop?
We're not sure yet.
Sometime before the end of the year.
Yeah, roughly.
When this hits. But don't sleep on Catalyst Wrestling. I'm doing a lot behind the scenes with Catalyst Wrestling out of Brooklyn. Homicide's there, Colby's there. A lot of like NWA talent comes through there. A lot of New York guys. Don't sleep on the Brooklyn show. It is a little different. It's a wrestling show, but there's just like a very artsy kind of flair to it in that, every show is a little different. The one show that I did with them working in the back, we had a brass band playing some of the people to the ring. And to see Black G's going to a slowed down, creepy version of The Saints Go Marching In by a live brass band is something I feel like every wrestling fan should experience at least once.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, they're up in Brooklyn every other month. I'm doing GCW in April. Just trying to work on building the knowledge of women's wrestling history and whatnot. Who knows? I might be doing that, bedtime stories with Allison Danger. God, that sounds so creepy, though.
You don't know until you try.
Absolutely.
You don't know what you try. You know what? Remember what CM Punk would always tell us: if you don't ask, the answer's always no. I tell Rob that all the time. He's like, "What do you think about this?" That's what. If you don't ask, the answer's always no. What the hell? What are you afraid of? Failing? You know what I mean? How often do we fail? All the time.
And he would also tell me, and this is only the wrestling, this is not for the rest of the world. Sometimes, it's better to say I'm sorry than to ask permission. And it's usually, it was in context to, hey, we want Daisy Hayes to do a jump off the top, but we're going to catch her and we're going to Samoan drop her into the front row. Punk would be like, don't tell Gabe, just apologize. So that, in context, that one is okay. In other contexts, that is not a life.
No.
Life.
Only in wrestling, yeah. So
consent is king.
Life lessons with Allison Danger. Allison, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Honestly, hearing some of the stories and listening to you and Matt talking about, everything from Ring of Honor to NXT to everything in between has been an absolute pleasure. And I'd love to have you on again.
Yes.
And, us sort of not necessarily educate you in the new world of Stardom, but to give you some stuff to watch and maybe fill you in on some of the happenings in Stardom if you're interested. I
would love that because I love doing my homework. I know a little bit about Marvelous only because Queen Aminata, that's my girl.
Yes.
It's criminal that she is not on TV every week. I'm just putting that out there. If I had to sign someone to a major company today, she would be the first person that, hands down.
Yeah.
It's absolutely criminal that she's not on television. But, she introduced me to a different company because Chigusa and Nagaya, and, anyone who learns women's wrestling history from me is required to watch the Gaia Girls documentary before we continue.
Yes.
And then I always say, text me when you hear the drop kick.
Yes.
When you know. But I love some Stardom homework. And
yes.
So that next time we'll actually discuss it.
I will get on that. Yeah, as soon as I get off this, I will send you a handful of matches, and then let me know when you watch them. Anything that I can help, or Robbie's smarter than I am when it comes to the Stardom stuff. I'm one of the smartest people out there when it comes to Stardom stuff. That's why this is his baby. He created this whole deal. If it wasn't for him, we would not be here at least on the Stardom cast. I'm not going to say in the world, but yeah, I'll send you 3 or 4 matches, and then when you watch them, and whenever you want to come back on the show, let us know. We'll just have to, we'll work a timeout, and we'll reschedule 2 or 3 times like we did this one. Right. And that's the way it works. And then we'll definitely have you back on the show. This was absolutely amazing. It was so good catching up with you again, Allison.
You guys, great to meet you, Rob. And
thank you very much. You too. Right, guys, and that is the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We could not do this without you. Thank you so much. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check out the website, www.thestardomcast.com. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/thestardomcast for loads and loads of historical episodes and all of that good stuff that Matt's doing over there. You can find us on social media at the Stardomcast. If you want to talk to me, I again don't really know why you would, but if you do, at Real Rob Goodwin on Twitter. Matt, sign us off, good sir.
Well, before we go, Allison, how about you? Do you want to plug your social medias?
So at Allison Danger on the Twitter, at the Allison Danger on Instagram and TikTok. I'm on TikTok, you guys, but I don't do a lot of stuff on TikTok. I do a lot of Bluey and Bingo. This is the stuff. Yeah, that's my happy place right now. So if you just want to see like a goofier side of me, go to TikTok. Do I have any other social media? Probably not. I'm not a huge fan. But yeah, and then make sure you check out Catalyst Wrestling, and if you are in the Atlanta area, April 21st, come see me at GCW and see what I'm up to.
Well, there you go, folks. Yeah, there you go. So if you want to get a hold of me, folks, Matt Turner OF on the Instagram and or the Twitter. If social media is not your thing, we completely understand. Hit me up on the email. thestardomcast22@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me at the email. Once again, folks, we thank you so much for your fantastic support. And like I said, any questions, comments, anything that we can do or I can do to make the show better, just let me know. Because like I always say, it's just not my podcast. It's our podcast, because we're all together and everybody's different. Everybody's special.